There's a lot of things that make Montana great, from the mountains and lakes to some of the finest towns in the West. But what really makes this place special is you. Our communities are full of people who are working hard to build good lives and remarkable things. At Opportunity Bank, our passion is helping folks do just that. Together, we can make a good thing even better. Opportunity Bank of Montana. Stop by and see us or visit us online. Member FDIC.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Yo, Big Sky Breakdown, SkySportsMT.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've gotten all sorts of new subscribers over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and that's awesome. Thanks for being here. Brooks Nuanez, Andrew Houghton coming to us live from Frisco, Texas. So this is about 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 9 p.m. there. We're going to give you as much as we can just about outside of just like the stats and all that of the game, because we know most of you people that are watching this are doing it based on the stats of the game. This is more the vibe, the energy, all the stuff leading up to it. So first of all, thanks for being here, guys. Appreciate you taking a minute. Montana lost 23-3 to South Dakota State. So let's start with initial reactions to the game. Then we'll talk to the lead up to the game. Then we'll get back to analyzing the game. This was a really, weird is the wrong word, but I thought that the Grizz hung tough in the first half. They forced more mistakes than South Dakota State are even prone to make. And they capitalized on none of them. And then when South Dakota State got the ball back, they just did what they did. And I don't know. I guess my main takeaway is that South Dakota State's really freaking good, man. Like, they're really freaking good. I don't think they did. I didn't think they played well at all for pretty much the duration of the game, except for little fleeting moments. What did you guys think?
Yeah, Colter, I'd agree with you, man. I think the Grizz had every opportunity to take at least some advantage and move somewhat forward in the game, garner some momentum. They had 2 or 3 different chances in the first quarter, or rather the first half, after a really marching, like kind of daunting first quarter. I thought the first quarter lined up for a game to be like kind of 2 giants with, heavyweight fight, 2 teams that weren't going to let up. Really impressive drives from both teams, and the Grizz.
I mean, right? Like the first South Dakota State drive was the Grizz. The Grizz had all sorts of weird stuff for them, and South Dakota State just kept going. It was like at the very first touchdown, you were like, oh, maybe the Grizz are in trouble. But you're right. They
answered it.
They answered it
in the exact same fashion. I mean, those drives were just about identical. The Grizz had to get a 4th down conversion on theirs, whatever. They pulled out a great play for the first 4th down conversion on their drive. At that point, I was like, man, are we seeing a game where the last team to have the ball is going to win, but we're only going to see 9 drives in this game? Because at that point, we're at the end of the first quarter.
And Andrew and I talked on the drive to Bozeman. We flew out of Bozeman, a lot cheaper. That's just how that works. We talked a lot about several different elements that I thought that came true, that if I was Montana, I would try to sit on the football. I would try to possess the football. If you get a turnover, make a change of pace play, but then possess the football, and you got to close within the red zone, let alone you have to close a possession at all. In theory, Nick Ramos hit a pretty long field goal. I don't remember. You guys could tell me how long it was. It was 35, 40 yards, right? At least. Besides that, they didn't finish a single possession. If you get the ball, you turn over South Dakota State, you got to have some kind of capitalization there.
So South Dakota State has a long drive. Then the Grizz answer, but what a play by Adam Bach on the goal line. So I guess for both of you guys, what did you think of the call for the Grizz to go for it? I think they had to go for it right there.
Absolutely.
You had to go
for it. And Bobby, I was like having an outside the body experience. And I guess this is what happens when you get to the national level. They like quote unquote make you do it. But Bobby Houck, you guys were there. Bobby Houck literally did an interview right before the play was going. The sideline reporter got him and they flashed and they said, "What do you think of the decision of going here?" And he's like, "Well, we're on the half-yard line, so we're going for it." And they tried to ask a follow-up. He's like, "We're good." And then like it was like, how is this happening? Nowhere in the rest of the country is this happening. I get it's on national TV, it's ABC, it's all good, trying to promote the game. But like Jim Harbaugh is not doing an interview like while his quarterback is calling the play to go for it. Regardless, then they stuffed it. But you have to go for it. I totally agree. Did you guys have any perspective on if it was good or not? Obviously, like the people on Twitter are saying, "Hey, Montana scored on that play." I don't know. I thought it was a good call by the refs, and I thought it was a good call by Bobby Houck too. I think you have to go for it, and I think they got stopped.
It was a good call to go for it. You have to go for it. The thing that I have issues with is, right, like you've already shown the reason you put your 6'4", 200 and whatever, what's Cliff McDowell's? 225,
230, yeah.
230. Reason you put your 6'4", 230-pound quarterback under center in 4th and 1 is so that you can run the quarterback sneak, the tush push, whatever it is. They'd already had a 4th and 1 where they put him under center, ran a great play action, got Nick Osmo out into the flat.
Yeah.
That worked out well. But to do it for the second time to sort of put Clifton McDowell under center and then try to run misdirection and try to surprise this team that's already seen you try to surprise them in that exact same situation earlier in the drive, I didn't love that, right? Like you've gotten the advantage by running Nick Osmo out to the flat on 4th and 1 with Cliff McDowell under center. They're going to be a little bit softer up the middle just because they've seen you beat them on that play. They've got to be a little bit more aware of the perimeter. So you made them aware of the perimeter. That's when you sneak it. Instead, they try to run it back out to the perimeter again. And even with all that I'm saying, it looked like Eli Gilman had it. I thought that was one of 2 plays of the game. Just Adam Box, an All-American. He hasn't played a ton this year. He's played about half the season with injuries. He just made an All-American play. I mean, that's a phenomenal attack. Stopping Eli Gilman. You're running he didn't even come up and meet him at the line of scrimmage. He's running laterally, and he's able to drag him down when it looked like he would get in. So, like, I can't really fault the decision to go for it, of course. Can't really fault the play call. I think the refs got it right. I just think Adam Bach made a play there.
We'll get back to just like the ins and outs of this game. And I told you we're going to go back to front, but here we are. So I want to talk about like just the prestige of South Dakota State and how much like this whole thing meant to them. But before we get there, just tell us about the whole lead up to it. I mean, you guys are in Frisco. You went to Grizz Fest last night. All your guys' pictures and content, videos, and all that stuff from the lead up to it was awesome. I was texting some of our great supporters, some of our clients, some of the people that helped send us down there, and they were asking me what I thought, and I said, okay, there's the tail of the tape in terms of talent of South Dakota State versus, just the fire and fight of the Grizz. But I thought that the lead up to the game, while amazing and so filled with pageantry, was perhaps a disadvantage for the Grizz, just because it was like they were being celebrated as some sort of champion, even though they had not won a championship. So it was awesome to be a part of. So I guess 2-part question, like, what did you guys think of all the pageantry, all the lead up to it? Awesome to be a part of, I'm totally sure. But did it hinder Montana?
Yeah, I don't think so, man. I mean, I understand exactly what you're getting at. And like,
Yeah.
I agree that in like the overarching picture, I think it probably did take away from it. I don't think the Grizz were going to win this game 100 times to Sunday. I don't think that there was a lot of
That's my
times
take, right? Like, there's really no way the Grizz were going to win this game, right?
after it's all said and done. I thought they had a chance to win before. I said that kind of extensively, and I thought that during the game, after the first quarter, after the first half, I thought the Grizz still had a chance, which was all they could really ask for, because I thought South Dakota State was a better team. I thought that kind of across the board, if you talk about defensively, the Grizz's strength is on defense. And I thought I thought South Dakota State matched them at all three levels. If you went man for man, I thought South Dakota State's secondary was the best I've seen in a long time. And that was what you thought. I didn't really understand how their outside linebacker played, and kind of added into that secondary.
Number
making it
two, right?
Number two,
Man.
a 6 or 7 man secondary, and how hard they banged. I mean, it was very reminiscent of North Dakota State, where you see a 6'1", 195-pound white dude from Nebraska and just brought the hat. Like, I mean, with so much aggression, let alone just true faith. I mean, like they believe in what they're doing, and you can feel it. So I thought the Grizz weren't winning anyway. As far as at halftime, you feel pretty good about it. Once they get a couple turnovers, South Dakota State starts rolling. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. So the pageantry leading up to it, Colter, I think it's warranted. You're coming out of some weird times last couple of years with COVID. Montana has such a strong fan base, as you know, the top 4 or 5 FCS schools do now at this point, all do now. Montana State and Montana, you can't take away from how much people care about it. And in that sense, I do think there is something to, if you're all traveling to a neutral location and there's something to celebrate, I do think it's important to get together and share that feeling, because I know that when they get off the bus and I'm standing in that little tunnel there and I'm looking around watching all those fans, I mean, that's real. No matter what you think of it or not, no matter what the outcome is, that experience is real. I think that those people deserve to share that, absolutely. So did they get blocked up by that? I think that would be unfair to the effort of South Dakota State.
Totally. What'd you think of just the whole festivities, Andrew?
I thought it was a little bit like uncertain, right? The Grizz have thrived in this run by playing at home, where the routine and the tradition and the pomp and circumstance of it is so set in stone. Like, all those Grizz fans are just so comfortable. The players are, obviously, but all the Grizz fans are just so comfortable going to Washington Grizzly Stadium, because they know what to expect. They know exactly what to do. They know exactly what they're going to get. And I thought coming down here, it's been a long time since the Grizz have played in. I mean, it's been a generation since the Grizz have played in this game.
For sure.
Over 10 years since they played in a real big neutral site game like this, right? I just thought it was a situation that they were struggling to handle, because either you're at home and you're feeling comfortable, you're feeling great, you know that you're the Kings there in Washington Grizzly Stadium, or you're going on the road where you're clearly set up as the opposition, right? Like, think about the Kibbe Dome this year, and they go to Idaho. They're just clearly the antagonist there, right? I thought in the neutral site, it's sort of the Grizz fan base felt just a little bit, and I'm not basing this off any anecdotes or anything, just what I observed, the feeling that I got. They feel a little bit uncertain, because you're there to compete, but also it's sort of, you're expected to coexist as well. Both teams are being celebrated at the same time. So that was kind of interesting. Like Brooks said, I don't really think it affected the game. And like, sort of to piggyback off his point, I thought the story of the game was really simple. The Grizz played well. They came out, they were prepared. They played very well in the first half. They got the breaks that they needed here and there, with the interception in the first half, the punt in the first half that bounces off a South Dakota State player. They did that could be asked or expected of them, and South Dakota State, it's just better. I mean, we're sort of wondering this year, for a full decade, we've had North Dakota State at the top of the subdivision, setting that standard. They've fallen off. We weren't sure if South Dakota State was up to that same standard. I think they answered all the questions today about, like, that's just the continuation. They're the new North Dakota State. There's no change in the level at the top of the subdivision.
If life has become overwhelming, crazy, and hectic, then now is the perfect time to try the healing powers of CBD. Greenhouse Pharmacy has a full CBD apothecary with the largest selection of whole plant, full spectrum CBD products in the state of Montana. Choose from high quality brands and products like tinctures, balms, coffees, and tea, edibles, and so much more. Plus, Greenhouse Pharmacy offers exclusive products such as relaxing bath bombs, soaking salts, pain patches, and lotions. Visit Greenhouse Pharmacy on 3rd Street across from the Good Food Store.
It will be so interesting to see how, if they can carry it on, because there's all this scuttle now that Jimmy Rogers might be on the move, the head coach of SDSU. Zach Luha, the offensive coordinator, might be on the move. Mike Gronowski, who is, he joins Carson Wentz and Brock Jensen as the only 3 guys in the history of the FCS National Championship game to win multiple FCS National Championship game player of the game honors. So on the heels of winning the Walter Payton Award, South Dakota State was absolutely stacked. I loved your comments about how many Grizz fans showed out in full force, Andrew, and yet it was still an interesting experience for them to try to treat it like it was you're there, everybody's there, and usually, like not usually, always you're overwhelming the opponent. And you could tell watching it on TV, there was certainly a strong Montana contingent there. There was also certainly a strong South Dakota State contingent there. But I think that all these things that we're talking about, the lead up to the game, the hype, who's playing for what, the intangibles, all that sort of stuff, it really just falls down to dust. It's nothing. It's non-factors because in the first half, the Grizz played like an underdog, but then couldn't capitalize. And I think not getting the fourth down on the 4th and 1 early, and there was probably not getting anything besides a field goal off of Corbin Walker's pick, and then getting 0 points off of the punt that went off somebody's leg, and the Grizz recovered. Like those are the things that thwarted the Grizz, because that's the thing is like I think that's why the Grizz have been the single number one hardest team to analyze from a ESPN radio and Big Sky Breakdown podcast perspective. We've known the strengths and weaknesses just in terms of observing them all season long. But it's so hard to quantify two things. One, it's so hard to quantify the spirit and heart of a team. That's something that Montana had all the way until the end, even if they lost by 3 touchdowns in this game. And two, it's so hard to quantify the element of momentum within the style that you play. That's what I said on all the national shows I went on this week. Throw the stats out. Oh, the Grizz averaged 385 yards per game. Like, what does that even mean? Because the Grizz play their games on half the field because of the way that they control field position and they ride momentum. So I guess that's, to me, the story of this football game is they did what they always do. They made the plays or they got the luck to ride the momentum. But for the first time in 3+ months, they didn't capitalize on that whatsoever.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Colter. But there's one thing I think is very important is that all I've heard about is the Grizz playing well at home. The Grizz should have been up 17-7 at halftime against a superior team in a neutral environment where it was 60 or 65 to 30-35, 60-30 at best, 60-40 at best.
Right.
South Dakota State had a quarter of the Grizz section and then the rest of it. And it was plenty raucous in the first quarter. And the Grizz completely played above their heads like they always do. And that's because that's who they are. And the fact that they didn't punch it through, to me, you could put it on a lot of different things. But you have a transfer quarterback who's playing above his head, who is talented but has shortcomings. So been on an absolute heater. He met his match in the second half. That's the reality of it. You have
He also got hurt. I don't know if you guys heard that in the post-game press conference, but the sideline reporter for the ABC broadcast reported on Clifton McDowell having a right leg injury for the duration of the game.
Bobby Houghton didn't see that, but he doesn't need to see that. He can transcend injuries to the most important player. Doesn't even see it. The fact is that the chances that they created for themselves, neutral field or not, they couldn't have done that at home any better than they did here, and they didn't capitalize, and that's going to hurt. Like the Grizz fans are going to say, we lost to a better team. Gosh, we had a good time down here. The pageantry is great. Should have been up 17-7, at very least 10-7, and had a chance to do something with it. The false, all that stuff can happen in the second half. I think South Dakota State is winning that game 8 or 9 out of 10 times, like I said, but the Grizz, unbeknownst to them, happened to fall once again into a perfect situation, and it just didn't happen.
That's a totally my take too. South Dakota State is 2 scores better than Montana. Montana should have been up 1.5 or 2 scores at halftime, and then you never know what happens.
You never know.
Here's my thing. I think it's all well and good to say that. I think that this was the game where, man, Montana's control of the flow of the game and control of momentum, where that was going to just be irrelevant no matter what. I think it's completely possible that they could have been up 17-7 at halftime. I'm not sure that would have mattered in this game anyway.
Yeah.
I know we said we're not going to talk too much about the final stats in this one, but just like I'm looking at it, if you score on that first drive, you make it 7-7. If you take advantage of the Corbin Walker pick, you make it 14-7. Say you get a field goal after the punt that hits the guy, whatever, you make it 17-7 at halftime. I'm not sure that changes the result, and here's why. I'm looking at the Montana rushing stats right now. Eli Gilman had 7 carries for 18 yards. Nick Osmo had 6 carries for 18 yards. Clifton McDowell had 13 carries for 16 yards. Xavier Harris had 2 carries for 15 yards. You don't have a guy who rushed for more than 20 yards. We knew that was probably going to happen against South Dakota State. They're great at stopping the run up the middle. They, exactly like everybody said they were going to, they spilled things to the outside in the secondary, like Brooks said. Full of hitters, you can't get anything running in the perimeter anyway. So with that being said, Clifton McDowell and the receivers needed to win this game. Looking at the stats again, Aaron Fonts had 7 catches for 76 yards. 3 of those catches and 30 of those yards were when Kiali Ayat was in the game for the last drive. Bergen had 4 catches for 25 yards. Keelan White had 4 catches for 19 yards. I'm just not sure, even if they were up 17-7 at halftime, like what they were going to do in the second half to hold that lead, to keep the offense moving. The Fonts fumble is the big one, because that one, they were inside the 40. He gets hit from behind. He doesn't see the guy coming. They were moving it on that drive. Maybe they get points out of that drive. I'm just saying here, South Dakota State shut them down.
At Blackfoot Communications, our mission is to connect people, businesses, and communities, bringing a world-class fiber network to homes, communities, and businesses of all sizes ensures Montanans have access to fast, reliable, and secure internet and phone services. Are you ready for fiber internet? To find out if fiber is coming to your area, visit goblackfoot.com/readyforfiber. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications.
And even if they're riding the lightning, and even if they're getting those plays on special teams and on defense, which they did, they're gonna have to play keep away and stay ahead in the second half, even if they're up 17-7 at halftime, because I'm just not sure where they're getting more points.
That's exactly right. And I we're not here to like make excuses or do all the things, like all the reasons why the Grizz should have won, because I totally agree. Even if they would have capitalized on all of their first half opportunities, it's very reminiscent of the Cat game, right? Like, it's just really hard to beat this team, even if they do make mistakes and play bad, whatever. I mean, Jimmy Rogers said it in the post-game press conference that he is so deliberate and direct and non-brash.
Or excited or happy. He's not happy about anything.
He said, I have a sickness. He said that in the post-game press conference. He's like, I have a sickness. I can only think about what's next on how to get better. Because one of the post-game questions was, how do you feel about this? He's like, I feel great. I can't wait for what's next. You know, he said, he literally said, I have a sickness and I don't know how.
They said
he didn't even say he felt that great.
He said,
right.
They said, Jimmy, you weren't happy last time you guys won it. Are you happy now? He said, absolutely not.
Yeah, he didn't even seem that happy.
It's amazing, and it makes for a fascinating, if non-heartwarming character. But he also said in his post-game opening statement, he said, after we did that and stamped it, and the Grizz had 275 total yards and 3 points, we are the greatest defense in FCS history. And I looked it up. In fact, they are the greatest defense in FCS history when it comes to scoring defense. There's only been 2 other defensive units in the history of the FCS that have given up less than 10 points per game. South Carolina State, who didn't even make the playoffs or play in the Celebration Bowl. They just did it in an 11-game regular season. And Colgate, who lost in the second round of the playoffs, I think 2 or 3 years ago. This is the first national championship team in the history of the FCS to give up less than 10 points per game. That's an astounding number. North Dakota State, Montana, all these other schools that hang their hats on defense. This is like where the coaches are yelling at us, being like, you nerds, stats are for losers. This is where the stat comes into play, though. The stat that matters the most. It doesn't matter how many yards or any of that stuff you give up, how many. Jimmy Rogers bit the guy's head off when he's asking him about only having 24 sacks this year. He's like, well, yeah, guess what? We rush the passer so well, we can't get sacks. That's the thing. When it comes to it, at the end of the day, the number one stat that matters for a defensive coach like Jimmy Rogers is scoring defense. You wrote this great story, Andrew, about all these coaches talking about him and what he's going to do. This was like his Mona Lisa, right? I mean, you could talk about all these different things, but 3 points in the national championship game to finish at giving up 8.7 points per game. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's his magnum opus. I mean, they gave up 15 points in 4 playoff games. You do the math, they're giving up less than 4 points a game against
15 points in 4 playoff games. That
against what's supposed to be 4 of their toughest opponents that they're playing because they're in the playoffs. Right?
It's crazy.
We just got done saying that the Grizz should have scored 17 in the first half. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe not.
Yeah, right.
Like, I don't know if
Maybe not.
you guys were there when Isaiah Stallbird sat down. Isaiah Stallbird was down, was late to the press conference.
It was like,
Sat
15
down.
minutes late.
Jimmy,
And Jimmy Rogers looked at him. He goes, 156 to whatever
he wrote it. He wrote it down,
And
circled it, and underlined it.
and then said, "You make sure you see that." It was too good.
Unbelievable, man. And I mean, that stat, like, I read these stories, I edit all of them. I know everything that could possibly happen statistically going into a game like this. And when the dude running the presser says that, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Right.
Absolutely insane. And then I was just so impressed, like I say, with not the depth, but when you talk about partying on the pile, you talk about pursuing the football, you talk about playing with confidence and energy. I mean, yeah, man, they aren't giving up points for a reason. You guys, I'll post some photos on SkylineSportsMT.com of Adam Box stuffing Eli Gilman. You think it was close? It was not close. Dude put his heel on the goal line, an inch away from it, and then, I mean, unbelievable.
I mean, like the play before that, when Clifton McDowell was scrambling in, they hit him so hard he helicoptered.
He turned about 3 different directions in the air because he got hit so many times.
He went more than a 360. It was like a 540. Because when it first happened, all the girls were like, "Isn't that a touchdown?" I was like, "Well, no, because the ball's not over the plane because he got hit so hard."
He got spun around in midair.
he landed with the ball.
Literally went a yard backwards because of how he helicoptered.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that was so impressive about all that's impressive. The physicality, the pursuit to the ball, partying on the pile, like Brooks said. The reason why I think that Jimmy Rogers has a fair case to sort of sit back and gloat about it a little bit is they were so prepared. And this is what people were saying in that piece that we posted on Skyline Sports before the game. Jimmy Rogers is going to know every single one of Montana's tendencies and every single down and distance, and so are his players. And, notwithstanding that he had 3 weeks to prepare them for that game, that is one of the most prepared defensive efforts that I have ever seen. I mean, I can count on not even one hand, on probably 2 or 3 fingers, the amount of times that South Dakota State was out of position or unprepared for something that Montana threw at them. I mean, think about the things that Brent Pease did in that game. Think about the things that they were running. He's running a hook and ladder off a screen to the outside, swarming him. They were so prepared for everything that Montana did. They were in the right position for everything that Montana did. It was sort of a stunning defensive performance. I mean, they knew that Montana likes to hit the big plays, the deep shots after they get the turnover. So 3 plays after they get the recovery on the punt, they try to run a pump and go with Keelan White. Cornerback's giving him 3 steps. He's not even biting on the curl because he knows the scout. He knows they're going to take that shot. Clifton McDowell ends up having to scramble and throw it away. It was so impressive from like a mental and preparation standpoint. And I think a lot of that, and Jimmy Rogers made sure to give credit to the rest of the defensive staff, the rest of the assistants. I think a lot of that comes back to the guy at the head of the staff.
Have you or a loved one been charged or accused of a crime? If so, the stress can leave anyone feeling helpless and alone. But you don't have to be alone. Hi, I'm Dave Maldonado, and I've successfully defended Montanans for over a decade in these situations. So if you're tired of being scared, let's get you prepared. To see how, visit BigSkyDefender.com today.
You are not alone. Visit BigSkyDefender.com to find out more on how you can fight back against local and federal criminal charges.
Can't tell you how unbelievably impressed I was with Jimmy Rogers, not just in the lead up to this game, not just during this game, all season long. We had him on Nuanez now, second or third week of the season. And I was like startled by how deliberate and to the point he was. And when people are so direct and honest, I think in our modern society, we sometimes take that as like cocky and having bravado, but he is so not like that, that when you're trying to absorb it, you're like, man, this guy, he knows exactly what's going on and he says it, but how honest and deliberate he is, that's going to make him have egg on his face, right? No, it's not, because he's so to the point and deliberate. Like, when people talk about him being one of the best young coaches in the country, I think that that's absolutely true. Like, to be able to say, we are the best, and here's why, and here's how we're going to do it, and here's why we're not going to fail, and do it over and over and over again. I mean, he had hours worth of press conferences this week, and he said that straight up without flinching. He didn't even raise his eyebrow. It's amazing. Like, the fact that he was able to take it over. And to take over for a guy that was there for 26 years and like incrementally built it, and then to take it to like an extreme next level immediately, that's just such an impressive coaching job. I was sort of hating on him getting the Eddie Robinson Award as the National Coach of the Year. After experiencing him for the last month and then seeing what they did in this national championship game, he absolutely deserved that.
Yeah, man, he's a quite the guy. I don't know if it would work everywhere. I don't know if that's true.
Such a good point. He's been at South Dakota State for half his life. It is what made him, and he is what made it. Like, those are very symbiotic things.
Yeah, when you have the DNA, or rather you create the DNA and it's in your blood, I mean, it's a different thing. And would it work in the Big Ten or in the SEC? I don't know.
Or like any place where he just doesn't have that built-in authority of having been a linebacker there and then immediately.
But he's not a big presence. He's not a huge guy. Like, if you're the 6'5", if you're the XO lineman like Kramer, the big head, right. You have something like that. That's why I've always thought that Cooper. Yeah, Cooper has it. Germer has it. I've always thought it's interesting.
X got it.
I've always thought it's interesting, like a guy like Kate Ione or Bo Baldwin, or not. Those aren't the same kind of guy, but different regular guys, right? Like Jimmy Rogers is a pretty regular guy. Like, I stood next to a pretty regular guy, and
regular guy in his makeup. It seems like he's I don't know. He just seems like a next level guy in his mentality.
I thought it was pretty interesting. He said that football to him is not only everything, it's everything. It's what he lives, it's what he breathes, it's what he thinks. It's the only thing he cared about. He held his hand up with a wedding ring on. I was like, yeah, you got a family too, man. But like, really, this is intense. You care about this like a lot. Again, They said, are you happy? He said, not really. So it's like, I mean, yeah, he's a different cat for sure.
It's a different cat for sure. All right, we only got about 5 minutes left, and if we go over, I'll launch another one. But I think we're all on the same page. South Dakota State is the two-time now defending national champions for a reason. That is well earned, and they should be. Where are we at with the Grizz now, though? It's going to be a fascinating offseason, because they lose some, they don't lose some. There's so much uncertainty. Where are we at now with the Grizz and Bobby Houck?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't really start evaluating the offseason without figuring out whether they're going to lose or not lose the man at the top. It's the one question that's got to be answered. Everybody knows it's been reported all over, to hell and back. This is Bobby Houck's contract year. And at a point early in this season, it seemed like it was going to be Bobby Houck's last year. I think that with how the season finished, of course, it's going to be Bobby Houck's decision whether this is his last year or not. And it'll be interesting to see what decision he makes, and if he doesn't come back, what he's going to do next. But that's the question that has to be answered before anything else. So that's number one. Number two, they're in such an interesting place here because I think they're clearly a level or 2 levels or 3 levels even short of the top with what we saw today. But in chasing that, you can lose what you have. They had a great season. They have a phenomenal team. I think that they have a philosophy that really works under Bobby Houck and the rest of the coaching staff. And it turns out that that wasn't enough to beat South Dakota State, but it was enough to beat everybody else in the country. Do you go chasing? Do you make a big change trying to chase South Dakota State, trying to get over that hump, trying to chase the brass ring? I think a lot of people would argue that you have to. I think that in the right circumstances, that could be the right move. I also think that comes with the risk of losing what you have right now. And it'll be interesting to see sort of how Bobby Houck, if he comes back, chooses to navigate between those lines.
Absolutely agree. How do you catch North Dakota State was like the narrative of the FCS for 10 years, 12 years in a row, because it was like, well, it doesn't really matter what they lose. They still have that. This SDSU thing seems a little bit more finite to me, and maybe they'll prove us wrong. Like that was the thing about North Dakota State was how do they react when Craig Bowl leaves? How do they react when Brock Jensen graduates? And then you can go all down the line, Chris Kleiman and Carson Wentz, all these different things. But this one seems, and I'm not putting the headstone on South Dakota State's grave, but rumors are that Jimmy Rogers is going to Minnesota and Zach Luhan's going to Northwestern and Mark Gronowski's going to be on the bidding block for one of those 2 Big Ten schools. And Adam Bach has an extra year. Does he come back to SDSU or not?
And the presser he was going to.
For sure.
He did, yeah.
Mason McCormick's graduating. He's going to the NFL. Garrett Greenfield's graduating. He's going to the NFL. Isaiah Davis is graduating. He's going to the NFL. Zach Hines graduating. He's going to the NFL.
Colter, everyone is, man. When I was naming photos, I didn't name a guy in a photo that was not a senior.
Yonke twins going to the NFL. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and again, North Dakota State was in this position years ago. How do you replace this whole group of guys? And then they did it 2 different times. And that's why the dynasty is literally unparalleled in college football history to this point. But I agree with Andrew. I don't think you have to, how do you beat SDSU? We don't need to chase this thing. I think you just got to keep doing what you're doing. You're right on the doorstep.
Yeah, I think Montana's in a great spot, man. I think that historically they're going to be able to continue to rise. They've brought back what people regionally and kind of in the West Coast know to be true of them now is more true than ever to a lot of people. Maybe that's exposure. Maybe that's the product. Maybe that's the talent that they're bringing in. But I think that if South Dakota State loses all that stuff, that's a different thing. All the seniors, if you start losing coaches like that and you start to lose that culture, it's a really hard thing to not only duplicate, but to replace. So I think that, you're not chasing South Dakota State. I think that the FCS, as always, should be dominated by the blue bloods, which is Montana. I think Montana finds itself in this exact place next year, if not sooner, aka going on a pretty good run here in the next year or 2. Again, that's not prognosticating on what they're going to do next year, but I think Montana's in a very good spot, just almost as good, if not better, than South Dakota State if they're going to keep their infrastructure involved.
And the Cat's going to be back next year too, and that's going to push the whole thing forward. NDSU's going to be back next year. Nobody took the NIL deals that they were getting floated on, so the Mondac Bowl continues. SkylineSportsFT.com. Brooks Nuanez, Andrew Houghton joining us live from Frisco. Thanks for being here, boys. Appreciate it. Keep the content rolling. We'll keep the content rolling. We'll see you on the other side, but thanks so much for doing it.
If life has become overwhelming, crazy, and hectic, then now is the perfect time to try the healing powers of CBD. Greenhouse Pharmacy has a full CBD apothecary with the largest selection of whole plant, full spectrum CBD products in the state of Montana. Choose from high quality brands and products like tinctures, balms, coffees, and tea, edibles, and so much more. Plus, Greenhouse Pharmacy offers exclusive products such as relaxing bath bombs, soaking salts, pain patches, and lotions. Visit Greenhouse Pharmacy on 3rd Street across from the Good Food Store.